wonderful to see everybody here for this important Housing Justice Forum hosted by Making Housing and Community Happen. My name is Bert Newton. I am the Outreach and Liaison Coordinator for Making Housing and Community Happen. We are honored to have Kristen Schrader-Frechette, Professor in the Department of Biological Sciences and Department of Philosophy at the University of Notre Dame, and Tim Kohut, Director of Sustainable Design with National Community Renaissance. They will be our featured speakers this evening. But first, we're going to start with a few announcements, then a spiritual reflection, then some very brief subcommittee reports, and an 8-minute video, and then we will jump to the educational portion of tonight's forum. So before we start tonight's Zoom meeting, please mute yourself and pause the video if you're stepping away. A few announcements here. We don't charge to attend our monthly housing justice forums. We depend on the generosity of donors to do our work. If you'd like to make a contribution, please go to our website, www.makinghousinghappen.org, and then /donate if you want to donate. Donations are tax deductible, and Anthony's going to put that in the chat. We have an opportunity also to team up with LA Voice to do phone banking for the propositions on the ballot this November. If you are interested in phone banking with Making Housing and Community Happen and LA Voice for the November ballot propositions, please let us know in the chat and we will contact you later with the details. Also, we have an upcoming Making Housing and Community Happen Housing Justice Forum on Tuesday, September 22nd, so in about a month, at 7 p.m. And the topic is going to be Advocacy 101. The presenters will be Alexia Salvatierra, author of Faith-Rooted Organizing, and Anthony Manousos, who's here with us tonight, who's a co-founder of Making Housing and Community Happen and longtime advocate for the Friends Committee on National Legislation. So that's September 22nd, 7 p.m. You don't want to miss that. That's going to be good training in community organizing. Also, where do Biden and Trump stand on affordable housing? To learn about their positions, go to laquaker.blogspot.com. Where do Trump and Biden stand? And Anthony will put a link to that blog, it's his blog, in the chat. So now we're going to have our spiritual reflection, and that also is me. So I'm going to need to do the screen share. Second here, all right. And I trust you can see that.
And my own friends as well.
Now I see what Kristen was talking about when she, all right, so I had to move that thing out of the way. All right, and one of the slideshow from the beginning. Now we are a faith-rooted organization, interfaith organization, so we don't always use the Christian Bible. In fact, last month I did the spiritual reflection, and I used a quote from a novelist to do the spiritual reflection. But my spiritual tradition is Anabaptist Mennonite, and so we do use the Christian Bible. And so I've entitled my 3-minute presentation here, What Does the Bible Have to Say About the Environment? Because people usually assume the Bible has nothing to say about the environment because we think of environmental crisis as a modern problem and not an ancient problem when the Bible was written. But actually, there was an environmental crisis during the times that the stories in the Bible happened. And it had to do with deforestation. In the Middle East, in antiquity, there was a lot of deforestation in that part of the world. In fact, that's how it became so deserty as it is now. A lot of the cedars and other trees were cut down by the empires in that area, and this fell hardest on the poor. The poor had, as always, environmental degradation hits the poor the hardest, and so we see this reflected when in the prophets. When speaking of liberation for the poor, the prophets paint word images of environmental renewal. So, for instance, Isaiah says, when the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers on the bare heights and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and dry land springs of water. I will put in the wilderness the cedar, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive, and I will set in the desert the cypress, the plane, and the pine together. And so for the prophets, a big part of justice for the poor and justice in society was environmental renewal, reversing what had happened, the deforestation that had happened. And then we see that in the very last chapter of the Christian Bible, Revelation, chapter 22, the very last chapter, we get this image of a city, the New Jerusalem, a city on earth that is a city of justice and healing with environmental renewal. This is the image we get from Revelation 22. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. So that's the vision the Bible leaves us with, is this vision of a city that is a place of justice and healing with environmental renewal. It's the tree of life. So with that image, let's have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Anthony is now going to give us some procedural rules. Anthony, can you give us the rules?
Sure. I think the main thing that we need to remember is just to keep mute until there's time for Q&A. And if you have any questions, please also feel free to write in the chat what your questions are. I think that's basically it.
Yeah, there's one more thing. If
Sure.
you need to get up and move about, just either pen your video or stop your video while you're gone. Sometimes it can be distracting to have people moving all around.
Right. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Jill.
Okay, so now we're going to have our subcommittee reports. These are brief reports. And first, Jill Shook, our executive director, is going to report for the North Fair Oaks Empowerment Project. Jill, can you give us a report for the North Fair Oaks Empowerment Project?
Sure. Anthony's going to put in the chat a job description. And that's really all I'm going to report tonight. I'll give you a brief overview of that job. And it's a part-time organizer. And we've been organizing on North Fair Oaks for about 10 years. It's a pretty blighted corner of the city of Pasadena, and it's an exciting place to hang out. I'll tell you, there's about 10 churches, 18 businesses, a lot of nursing homes, and some would say, you know, it's not a beautiful place, but it's where God's at work and doing some great work. And so that community is finding their voice, and there was a list of 15 items after we surveyed 150 of the residents and listened to what the community wanted. They determined 15 items they wanted to see happen in their community, and already they've accomplished 7, including a $268,000 traffic signal. And so it's very exciting to see that there's a desire to continue organizing, and that God has really supplied as far as funding for an organizer. So there'll be an opportunity to look at that in chat and see if it's something you'd be interested in or someone you know that might need a part-time job. So thanks.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you. That's awesome. Anne Marie Molina, I saw her name here, so she's here. Can you bring the report from the ADU subcommittee?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My report's going to be short as well. I think the biggest thing right now is the pilot program being sponsored by the housing department. Our group is going to contribute by doing outreach efforts to the community, to participants who might want to apply. It is a small pool of people that will be approved for the construction of new granny flats or ADUs, or of permitting of unpermitted ADUs. But we would really like to make sure that, you know, people that we know in the community that this would benefit apply for this. And so if you know of anyone, or if you're interested in helping us reach out to people, please put your name in the chat and I will reach out to you after. Tentatively, it was scheduled for September 1st and 2nd for the informational seminars, but the housing department, I believe it's because they're so far behind because of the rental program that they're going to postpone that for later on in September. We don't have any materials yet, but if you put your name in the chat, I will follow up with you. We were also trying to push for a design competition to provide pre-approved plans. And we're following up with Margaret McAustin, who had brought it up in one of the city council meetings. Lastly, I do want to just announce to everyone that there was a proposition, AB 69, and that was to make it easier to finance the construction of ADUs. And that was passed. And it was really great because our group really participated in calling in, you know, and giving our support when it was up for vote. So I was really excited about that. That's about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne Marie. That's awesome work you're doing. Thank you so much. Tom Petersmeyer will now bring a report from the Safe Parking Subcommittee. Tom, I don't know if you're trying to speak but are muted. I can't see you.
I guess we can't hear you, Tom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now we can hear you. Yes.
I was muted. Okay. So again, on July 28th at the regular MHCH monthly meeting, the Safe Parking Committee presented its PowerPoint presentation on safe parking to be used with prospective safe parking site hosts. On August 16, several of us met with Reverend Sharon Richter from Trinity Church, Pasadena, to present our PowerPoint and discuss details of such a program. She came back to us on August 24th that her council voted to work with us to set up a safe parking pilot program. In addition, they may be able to provide showers certain days of the week and might serve a simple breakfast.
Thank you, Tom.
That's all.
Those who were unaware what safe parking is, it's safe parking for people who are living in their cars. There's about a quarter of people in Los Angeles County who are experiencing homelessness are living in their cars. So that's what Tom's group is trying to set up. Thank you so much for your work and Tom.
I'd like to add that in the San Gabriel Valley, there's not one safe parking place. Lot. We're trying to correct that.
Yes, yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Connie Millsap will now bring a report from the Community Land Trust.
Good evening, everyone. Community Land Trust is a new committee that's forming, and we've spent the summer gathering interested people and talking with them to find out where their interests lie and how they might be able to work with the committee as we begin the research of the possibility of having a community land trust for San Gabriel Valley. We are now at the point where we're going to have our first initial meeting. Excited about that. It's been long in coming. And other than that, I've been doing some additional training with Grounded Solutions on the many facets that are involved in community land trust, just to keep myself educated and we'll be educating group members along the way. So it's exciting times as we begin this journey.
Thanks, Connie. Yeah, they're putting a ton of work into that. And if you're not aware of Community Land Trust, it's a way of making home ownership a lot more affordable. So it gets pretty complicated, but that's the gist, the outcome of that. So it's a wonderful, amazing initiative. Next, Anthony is going to bring a report from the Affordable and Supportive Housing Advocates Subcommittee.
Yeah, we're excited. We have a new name. Our Homeless Housing Committee decided to change our name to Affordable Supportive Housing Advocates, or ASHA, and that more accurately reflects what we do. Now, the word ASHA means life in Swahili, happy in Hebrew, and wish, hope, or desire in Sanskrit. How great is that? This month, ASHA's focus has been on 2 new housing developments being proposed in our city. We're partnering with a Fuller student team concerned about CBD's proposed development of 105 units on the corner of Los Robles and Corson. They want to use a state density bonus by including only 8 very low-income units, which they'll probably need to adjust to at least 20% of the units or more to meet the city's requirements. This site is part of the Fuller Master Plan that requires 100% affordable student housing, so there's going to need to be some adjustments. We also plan to meet a developer seeking to build 227 market rate units on Los Robles next to the 99-cent store in a relatively low-income neighborhood near the freeway. They want to pay an in-lieu fee instead of including affordable units. We want to convince both developers to build as many affordable on-site units as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. That's that committee does a lot of stuff. If you really want to get some action, get on that committee. So now I'm going to bring a report from the Liaison Network program. We now have over 20 official liaisons and over 20 faith congregations in Pasadena. We are continuing to build our liaison congregation network, deepening our roots in the community and equipping congregations to come together to transform our city. A liaison mobilizes the members of their congregation to advocate for the needs of the community regarding affordable housing. That includes bringing people to these monthly forums, participating in our monthly trainings, engaging people in the congregation one-on-one, getting people to write letters and emails, and when there's no pandemic, to come down to city council meetings to advocate and testify, and to get a small annual donation from their congregation to help finance the work that we do. If you want your faith congregation to join our network, please contact me. I'll put my contact info in the chat. We are more powerful together when we come together and speak as one. Also, a very sad note, one of our liaisons had a tragedy in her family. The niece of Angie Spencer, our liaison to Pasadena Community Christian Fellowship, was murdered by her husband. Angie and her sister now have custody of her niece's 7 children. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and if you are able, make a donation to the GoFundMe page. I will put a link for that in the chat as well. So now Jill, our executive director, the executive director of Making Housing and Community Happen, will bring her report.
So I just have to say at the outset, I think my friend Esther Tarui from clear back when I was a campus minister in Fullerton is on this, and it just makes me so happy to see her name in her face. But there's a favorite verse that I have a lot of favorites, but one of them is Ephesians 2:20, and it essentially says, "Now all glory to God who is able to do this mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think." And so that amazing imagination that we can imagine, I feel like all of our volunteers are able to imagine and have wings to fly and accomplish the things that God puts in their hearts. And I especially think right now of the multiplying effect of that with our church Land Committee, Congregational Land Committee. So in partnership with LA Voice last month, we actually received a $100,000 grant. And so those funds are going to be used to do feasibility studies, address land use issues, and preparing for affordable housing to be built on excess church land. So far, there's 26 churches interested in going down this path and 7 in Pasadena. So this week, back today and tomorrow, we're meeting with 2 more churches on North Fair Oaks. I mentioned earlier North Fair Oaks in a pretty blighted area. We feel like once a lot of affordable housing comes in there, it's going to really help to revitalize that community, especially as some of it is mixed use where we can have little shops down below. So we already have 1 church with 43 units on a RFP ready to be sent to a development partner. So if you're aware of any affordable housing developers that might want to get a bid on that property, it'd be great. I'll put my contact in chat so that you have a chance to let us know if you're aware of any developers. Affordable housing developers, that is. So we just finished also conducting a poll to determine the level of interest not only in building on excess land, but also pallet homes and trailers. Right now there's 50 trailers just sitting in the Rose Bowl, mostly unused. And so we want to see if we can get the city to put some of those in church parking lots. We're anticipating with COVID, some research is saying that up to 20 to 45% increase in homelessness. And so we want to be ready, and we want the churches to be on the forefront of addressing the dramatic need. One of the exciting things we asked on that poll is if they'd be interested in supporting what we're calling an overlay zone, which would enable any church in the city of Pasadena to have the proper zoning so that we can actually build. So our response on that question, if they'd be supportive of that, was 98%, which was really exciting. And we want to extend a grateful just how much we appreciate the Ahaya Center and Spiritual Living, because they played a huge role in getting this poll done. It was a lot of work to do, but really worth it. So I'm going to close out just talking in my report about a few other things here. All of our teams are moving forward, as you can see in their reports, even in this time of pandemic, and maybe because of the pandemic, with the looming fears of eviction. Moratoriums are scheduled to end, and that has kept many people in their homes, people who are unable to pay rent right now. Unemployment benefits are scheduled to end, and so our whole society is feeling the edge and the fearfulness of possibly becoming homeless if things aren't changed in terms of policy. One study, I already mentioned that. So we need strong rent protections, and we need homes that people can afford. Our organization is well named Making Housing Happen. In 1948, the Housing Act, it was powerful when there was a tremendous shortage of housing, kind of like there is now. People were living in chicken coops. They were living in boxcars. The language of the act was beautiful, a decent home for all Americans. But the details of the actual policy didn't quite play out the way that it was intended, or maybe it was intended that way. I don't know, but it was full of a lot of racism, and we've never fully defined what it means. You know, a decent home. What does that mean? A decent home, and so we really, I think, have been trying to define that ever since and make sure that we have a safe, decent home for every American. And so tonight, I'm especially excited about thinking about how do we really have a safe, decent home that's not only safe environmentally, but in the very structure. So I'm just going to close mentioning another one of my favorite verses. It's from Romans 8. And some of you might be familiar with that passage where it talks about that there's really nothing at all that can separate us from the love of God. But in that same chapter, it talks about how creation is groaning and groaning to be liberated from bondage and decay and be brought into freedom. And so I believe all of us are the hands and feet to help bring that about. And I think we all feel that groaning. I think we can feel that, and we can be part of liberating. So I'm just so grateful for the chance to be part of that myself. Thanks.
Amen. Amen. We now are going to show a video. Anthony, do you want to introduce it, or do you want me to introduce it?
Why don't you introduce it?
Okay. There was a young woman, Naeli, who was going to be here, where we were hoping we could get her here tonight to tell her story. She's been affected by environmental contamination, but the effects have been so severe that she can no longer talk. So we are going to watch a video by her. So Anthony's going to set up the video. All right, so we're going to go on to our major portion of the night. We want to start with Tim Kohut. He is the Director of Sustainable, let me just make sure I got, He is the Director of Sustainable Design with National Community Renaissance, a regional developer and builder of affordable housing. Tim works with design teams, construction teams, and subcontractors, implementing strategies aimed at high performance and energy efficiency to ensure that all projects are built to meet the strictest accessibility requirements. He is a certified accessibility specialist, a certified energy analyst, home energy rating systems rater, and Building Performance Institute energy analyst. Tim has spent more than 20 years designing, building, and consulting on affordable housing projects throughout Southern California. So Tim, we're honored to have you here. Please come and speak to us. You have 25 minutes, and we will let you know in the chat as time is winding down. And afterward, Jill will facilitate 10 minutes of Q&A. So Tim, please speak to us.
Sorry, guys, got to remember to take myself off mute. Thanks, Bert, you nailed it. I think at the end of my bio, what I should really say is Tim is a nerd, because that kind of captures everything. Everything that's on my bio, just like, it's pretty nerdy stuff. Let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen really quickly, get this queued up. And while I do that, I do want to say that the video that Anthony started to cue sort of really caught my attention because I'm an architect, I'm an energy analyst, I'm actually a climate reality leader. So there's the big logo on the bottom of it, which is the Climate Reality Project, where a lot of those videos come from. It's Al Gore's, for those of you, maybe some of you are climate reality leaders too. It's Al Gore's nonprofit organization that deals with educating people around the climate crisis. So, you know, it's nice to hear from all aspects or all corners of what you do as an organization. It's heartening for me because, you know, I'm an architect and I work for a nonprofit developer builder of affordable housing. And building affordable housing is really, really hard. So the fact that you guys are out there and, you know, working your neighborhoods, both physically and politically, to try to make affordable housing a reality is very heartening. I've sat in way too many city council meetings where the opposition comes out in such great force that it just kills projects that we're trying to do in neighborhoods. And while we're trying to deal with the deficit of affordable housing, it's really hard to do unless there's local support. So kudos to all of you. The work sounds terrific and fascinating. I'm going to try to describe a little bit of the work that we do at National Community Renaissance. And I'm going to preface it by giving you just a little bit of an intro to who National Community Renaissance is. We are a nonprofit developer, builder, property manager, and resident services organization. So you see the corners of our organization there. We have our resident services arm is Hope Through Housing. So once we build our projects, we actually operate them and provide ongoing supportive services to our residents. which is really challenging right now in the time of COVID. We are sort of the life arm to many of our communities, vulnerable communities in many cases, and we've really had to double our efforts to try to just make sure that our residents and our communities are safe. I get to spend a lot of time thinking about sustainability and energy efficiency, and I've been driven most of my professional career by this desire to bring sustainability into the deepest corners of underrepresented communities. I started out as a Peace Corps volunteer in the 90s and started working as an architect and putting, very early solar panels on rural buildings, little rural homes in the middle of the Campo out in central Honduras, and little 90-watt panels with, firing a car battery, a 12-volt car battery, and a couple of light bulbs for the house. But it was fascinating work for those families because they've never had light after the sun went down. And here I am, 25, almost 30 years later, and I'm just doing it at a much larger scale with a little bit more focus and the power of the state of California behind me with the laws and regulations that we put in place that sort of, in my opinion, lead the world. What's fun about working in affordable housing is the challenge is we don't have extravagant budgets. We have always, constant political challenges and physical challenges, but we do more, I think, when it comes to pushing the envelope on renewable energy than any other corner of the building professionals out there. And if we can show what is possible by doing it in affordable housing, my argument is always, if we can do this, anybody can. And while I'm a sort of a tree hugger and an environmentalist, you might be able to tell from my surroundings here, I can't convince people to do things because I'm an environmentalist or a tree hugger. It just doesn't work. So, and you're probably going to find yourselves equally challenged as you try to advocate for these things. It is the morally right thing to do. We should be doing more of it, but you can't convince people to do that all the time because it's always going to come down to dollars and cents. And so what I'm going to show you now is where we stand when it comes to the dollars and cents of the argument and why I think we're going to win the argument. I just saw it tonight. Sierra Magazine, the magazine of the Sierra Club, is coming out with their new monthly edition is going to be The End of Oil, The End of Fossil Fuels, or something. That's the cover article. So I'm sort of heartened that we're moving in this direction and we're showing what's economically possible. And it no longer matters what the fossil fuel industry wants to do because they're going to lose the economic argument on this. And I'll show you why. Before I move on, I just want to just highlight a couple of things. Our deep commitment organizationally, we were recognized the last 2 years by the U.S. Green Building Council, who governs the Lead for Homes, the LEED building program. U.S. Green Building Council, the largest green building organization in the world, recognized National Core. It's sort of an elite group. I think there's 20 or so builders. We're the only affordable housing developer on the list. And we are the first developer to sign on to the American Institute of Architects 2030 commitment, where we commit to trying to get our projects to zero carbon by 2030. And we did that because fun part of my job is we get to hire the design teams, and then I get to tell them basically what they need to do to hit our goals. So I don't have to argue with people. I basically get to define the rules. And the rules are defined by us as you need to save us money and make our projects as energy efficient and affordable to operate as we possibly can. So one of the things that I like to talk about is, I mix in the academics periodically, but here's a little graph of the Swanson effect that describes what happens to pricing for photovoltaic panels, those solar panels you see on many people's roofs that generate electricity. What's happened in the last 40 years or so in pricing. And the Swanson effect says that every time that worldwide capacity to produce solar panels doubles, the cost of those PV panels drops by 20%. And you know, it's a really interesting graph, and you look at it and you're like, wow, that's really cool. And again, kind of nerdy information. But the beautiful thing for me as somebody who works for a builder is who's trying to get all of our projects to zero net energy is we see these prices drop in every single project that we build. Every single day that we go out with a new project and we bid this out and we try to get as much renewable energy on our buildings, we see the pricing drop. It went from $3.50 a watt probably 5 or 6 years ago, down to $3 a watt 4 years ago, down to $2.75 probably 3 years ago, down to $2.50 or so 2 years ago. And we're building a project now where we bought out the PV panels at $2 a watt. And what this means is, and I don't expect everybody to understand what dollars per watt means, but the gist of it is the cost of buying electricity that you put on your roof that generates electricity from the sun is now cheaper than it is to connect to the grid. So, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that economically why this makes sense. And the point is, if we're doing this and we understand this, then every single project that we touch needs to start with this understanding so that we drive this desire to make our projects as close to zero net energy and beyond as we can makes economic sense to us. It's not just the moral thing to do, it's the financially prudent thing to do for anybody who cares about conserving money. And we do, because we operate our projects once they're built on shoestring budgets. So how does this work? This is a little project we built down in San Isidro Senior Village, 51 units of special needs housing for the formerly homeless, right on the border of Mexico. And we were playing with this site for about 3 years or so. And when we got it, we conceived of this idea. It's a very simple building, sort of J-shaped around a courtyard. And the architect came up with these simple forms, and they brought me on board. And I started looking at this and saying, we have to think about this differently. We've got to start looking at the economics before we do anything. So I started doing my analysis on the economic advantages of installing large-scale PV, photovoltaics on our buildings, energy from the sun, which is free. And I use my skills. I get in and I, energy model the building conceptually while it's in conceptual phase, so I can come up with the strategies to employ that will get us as we can possibly get. And I run this analysis through the local utility rate schedule, and I come up with our operating budget for this particular project, $56,000 a year. This is what we would normally budget for the project. It has a single utility meter, electrical meter, because the residents are formerly homeless. So they're gonna pay us only their rent, and the rent has to cover utilities. So there's big incentive for us, rather than paying SDG&E, there's big incentive for us to try to maximize solar. So I say that this is now Title 24 101. This is what architects need to do. I take those simple forms and I start diagramming for the architect what roof forms. We need to put a lot of PV on those roofs, and we need to maximize deployment as much as we can. I suggested some ideas for solar thermal because it still has natural gas in it, which I'll come to in a little bit. And what I want to do is look at the from the sun, and the graph on the right. What I really want to do is make that pie, that blue slice of pie, as small as I can possibly make it. And we came really, really close on this one. We ran out of roof space, but we're 91% zero net energy is what I anticipate. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. We are reporting to the American Institute of Architects 2030 Challenge. So they use this digital data exchange, which obligates architects to identify their goals early and then design to those targets. You have to go into this, you can't wish for a sustainable building. You have to design the building to meet these targets. So you've got to know what it is and what you're shooting for. And I did the model very early on, and we measure our energy use in the amount of BTUs, thousands of BTUs per square foot per year. So a KBTU per square foot per year is the metric, the energy use intensity. That's the number that I actually modeled in this wonderful near zero net energy electric building. And that was the target. So, you know, I'm going to show you these photos. You're going to be like, wow, that's beautiful. Zero net energy almost. And then why is it not energy efficient? Well, we're relying on natural gas to heat our house. Gas is about 20% of the total energy that's used. So because we've committed to natural gas instead of electricity to heat the hot water, we're still stuck with this burden of, we've got fossil fuels going through the building to heat hot water, and it drives up the performance much higher than we want it to be. On more than twice what the numbers should be based on the targets that we want for the 2030 commitment. So what I say is, how about a different approach? This is right down the street in San Diego. This is a new 100-unit senior housing project called the Iris. And on this one, what we started to do early, I jump in, and again, this is me conceptual energy modeling, coming up with that, that form that I can use to predict how much energy would actually use in the building and where it would come from. And I start out my first assumptions with, again, the natural gas boiler, a 97% efficient natural gas boiler to heat the hot water for 100 units. It's a very efficient boiler. 1 unit of energy in equals 0.97 units of energy out. So I'm losing 3% of the total natural gas in combustion and the heat exchanger and things like that. Still very efficient. And then I say, well, what if I wanted to use all electric? And there's emerging technologies in the residential and multifamily residential markets called heat pump, hot water heaters and heat pump boilers. And they have an energy factor of 3.5. So boilers operate with natural gas on efficiency. Heat pumps operate on energy factors. 1 unit of energy in equals 350% efficient. So 20% of my building, I'm now heating the hot water 3.5 times more efficiently than I was before. So you can see that my energy use intensity number went down from 23 to 19. And now I'm going to throw in some renewables on top. This is how we have to think, because the cost of PVs has gotten so low. And look what happens to my energy use intensity. It's going way down, way down. So again, this is the tree hugger in me. The environmentalist is high-fiving everybody and slapping myself on the back. What a great job we're doing. We're hitting those targets. And nobody cares, right? So I'm looking at this. This is Tim being a nerd and talking about these really cryptic numbers that not many people understand, but he seems happy. So maybe we should do it. That's not how they think. So now I've got to go back and I've got to start thinking about the economics of this. So I'm going to go back and I'm looking at San Isidro Senior Village. So we detoured for the moment. We went down the street. We looked at the San Isidro Family Project. But now I want to go back and show you what I did at San Isidro Senior Village, the project that we diagrammed that we've just built. And I want to land this huge PV system on the building, and the owner comes to me, the development team says, we don't have the money. And I say, don't worry about it. The Swanson effect. Every time worldwide capacity of PV doubles, the price drops 20%. The price keeps dropping and dropping. And they say, what the hell are you talking about? And I said, well, it's going to be really cheap to buy this, or we can lease it. So here's what it would cost if we leased the system. It would cost us $16,000 a year, but my operational energy costs were $47,000 a year. So I'm making $31,000 a year by leasing the system. I basically told SDG&E, I don't really want your electricity. I'm going to take my own electricity from upstairs, and I don't have any money, so I'm going to lease it from somebody for 15 years. And after that, they're probably going to sell it to me for $10. So, and in the process, I'm going to make $31,000 a year. So they said, yeah, that's really good, but how much do we want to buy it? And so I went out and we've got some leftover money during construction. We did a really good job with our subcontractors, and the architect did a good job. We didn't have to come out of pocket for a lot. And so the last thing we can do is buy the PV system. And the PV system for this project cost $316,000. So we bought it on day one. So, if you look at this and you look at the return, which I'll show you in a little bit, if you're talking about somebody who wants to invest, and the reason the stock market's doing so great right now is nobody knows where else to put their money because interest rates are so low. So they put it in the stock market. And I'm walking around saying, 424% return on my PV system in affordable housing. Why didn't you invest in our affordable housing PV systems? We're saving $47,000 a year That's the savings. So $47,000 a year, there it is, we build it, right? So I model the thing, we build it, we land the PV on the roof, and everybody's happy on move-in day. But the key is you can't just walk away from it. This is where the key is. It's got to be in thinking about it, then you got to make sure that it's operating the way you've designed it. So this is new information for us. We instrumented the building so that we can actually look at the energy in real time. I want to make sure that it's producing the energy it's supposed to. So this is the energy consumption within the building itself, and each one of those colors represents a different element within the building. The big blue is the mechanical systems in the common areas. The orange line is the outdoor lighting. The two green lines are the top one are plug loads. The bottom one is the elevator, and the bottom purple one, I can't remember what that one is. I think it might be more plug loads, right? So that's what's happening. This is a 7-day period where you can see the energy is going up. And I look at this and like, I want to know where the energy is going. And I'm like, this is great, but why is the mechanical peaking at 8 o'clock at night? Why is the energy use? They're supposed to go home and the systems are supposed to turn off. So I'm looking at this, and we did something wrong in programming the thermostats. We're actually wasting energy in the middle of the night. And that's important because during the day, we're producing a lot of energy, right? So here's my production curves from the PV that's showing me that, hey, sun is shining. And when I look at this, this is my net energy. The curves at the bottom are the PV that's being produced. The curves above the black line are the energy going into the building. And what I want is the net energy always to be very deep in the negative because I'm actually making money. In this case, since July 31st, we've made $1,000, right? So I'm feeling pretty good. The days are going to get shorter. But what does this mean for us? And this is, again, if the point here is I can't be any clearer than I'm actually putting on the slide. If you're going to remember one slide, remember this one. What does $47,000 in annual utility savings look like over time? So this is 51 units of housing for the formerly homeless. It's a master metered project. That's my operational savings. So that ascending curve that grows to 1.955 million are the avoided electricity costs for my building. And the lines at the bottom are, the green one is the cash purchase. And it would have been slightly more affordable had we leased it. But at the end of the day, that $300,000 for the system, we had it and we had to spend it. So it actually didn't cost us anything. So in the 30-year life of a building, $2 million worth of operational savings in a 51-unit project is fairly substantial. So the argument that I'm making here, what do you do with those utility savings? These are our residents on move-in day, right? They're moving into our project, people who are formerly homeless who now have someplace secure to call home, right? And what do we do with $2 million? We've got plenty of ideas, right? So the idea here is do it, reach deeply, demand higher quality, push as far as you can when it comes to energy performance and renewable energy because it makes economic sense. And anybody who doesn't agree with you as building affordable housing right now, as I say, is either, unfortunately, a little bit lazy, a little bit misinformed, or they have serious ties to the utility companies that they just want to keep giving the utility companies money. And the utility companies will love you if you keep just investing in renewable energy. So here's where we land. We are in it for the long haul at National Community Renaissance. We build these projects. We are active in the communities forever and ever. And when you guys talk about affordable housing projects that go suddenly become unaffordable after you move in, we can't do any of that. We have these long-term affordability provisions and riders, 55 years or more that require us to make our projects permanently affordable. And then when the 55 years expire, they're still going to be affordable. The only problem that we have right now is that there's such a huge deficit in affordable housing in the state of California, and there's not enough money. And now we have more budget crisis issues to deal with. So there's going to be less money and more people competing, and community opposition to what we want to do, especially around homelessness, is very severe. As you guys know, in Pasadena, it's a really tough battle to fight. But when we get in there, we are in it, for the long haul, and we're all in it. And what we truly believe is we're showing the way that the rest of the affordable housing industry should be behaving when it comes to producing high quality, affordable housing. I'll hand it back to you, Joe.
We've got just 2 minutes left. If you have some final closing comments before we start Q&A, and if you have questions, everybody, please start getting ready to ask those.
I am ready for some questions.
Okay. There was one question in chat, actually two, sort of. One had to do with building affordable housing next to freeways. And maybe Tim knows more about the policy, but there was a research done, I think, by USC or UCLA, and
Yep.
and basically was it USC?
I think it was UCLA.
UCLA saying that you could not build within 500 feet of a freeway.
Right.
And so so that's not true of market rate housing, but affordable housing actually has higher standards of where it can be built. So that answers that question. And that kind of answers the other question too, about building affordable housing on toxic sites. What's happened, like in that video, we've got a gal that had her family home, next to an oil well, and that's not necessarily affordable housing, but that should never happen. And so, Tim, if you could speak to that, and maybe if you're aware of the history of housing and how it's worked with public housing, that often happened. It would be in undesirable places. But now, when you guys look at sites, what do you look for? How do you make sure it's a clean site so that you're not putting people in jeopardy?
So, and I see some of the questions coming through the proximity of, both the freeways and to public transit. So we have a lot of our projects, building next to public transit is the optimal thing to do. The problem is that everybody wants to build next to public transit. So that is the most expensive land to buy. There's a lot of discussion, and when you hear people talk about this, why is affordable housing so unaffordable? Why is it so expensive to build affordable housing? And the going rate, the limits on many of the projects is you can't spend more than $450,000 to develop a single unit of affordable housing. That is a state standard. And people have a heart attack when they say $450,000 for a 700 or 800 square foot unit. Are you killing me? Why don't we just give people the money? And the challenge is, we build that actual unit for $130,000, but you've got the cost of land, you've got the cost of consultants, you've got the cost of attorneys, you've got other regulatory hurdles. And if the land is the driver on this. So if the cost of land, if it's next to a metro site or something like that, even in this market right now, we're seeing that the cost of real estate is continuing to go up. So it's not getting easy. Building next to freeways, nobody wants to build the market rate housing next to the freeway. So a lot of times those are the affordable slices within a developed geographical landscape that an affordable housing developer can afford to buy. We don't like to buy anything within, 250, 300 feet for sure. 500 feet is really stretching it, but we do land with project sites sometimes. We're building one in East LA now, where we're designing it right at the 710 and the 10, not too far away, within close proximity in this area that has been deemed one of the worst areas for air quality in Southern California because of all the diesel particulate matter that comes from these trucks that are flowing down the 710 freeway. When we build with something like that, we have to go take extra precautions to make sure that the indoor air quality in that unit is.
You froze, Tim.
Outdoor air filtering systems to make sure that the families who live there are going to be safe. And my hope is that within the next 10 years, you're going to see this massive movement away from combustion engines to electric vehicles, including, short distance trucks and long distance trucks. And when that starts to happen, suddenly the air quality is really going to start to improve. I don't think we can bank on that for now, but the big challenge for anybody building affordable housing is where can you find the land that is amenity connected if anybody's sitting on land that they own anywhere in Southern California, that they're just dying to do the right thing, then you call National Corps and let us know. We would love to buy that property from you for fair market value with a little bit of a discount.
I lost him. So Tim, I think we lost Tim.
He's still here.
Oh, good. So Tim, I have a question, and I hope there's maybe a few more. We've got about 5 more minutes for Q&A. When it comes to tax credits and the funding source for affordable housing, and I know that it's about 400 points you have to score really high on in order to win those tax credits. And so, and I don't know what percentage, I know it's a really high percentage of those that are green and requiring some kind of environmental.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that for a minute and how that works?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, the U.S. Green Building Council came out with their lead for homes standard in 2007. And I'd say for the first 2 or 3 years, there were very few developers who were actually using that as a standard to guide their way towards the way they design and build affordable housing. At the time, I worked for Abode Communities, which was formerly known as the Los Angeles Community Design Center. We built some wonderful projects up in Pasadena while I was there, affordable, lead for homes certified. And the funding sources slowly grabbed onto that as a requirement. So most affordable housing now, you must be LEED for Home certified or Green Point rated or Energy Star certified. You cannot get the funding. You have to get all of the points. And the funding is so limited that, and it's so competitive, you have to go in and you have to get all of the points. And really the true thing that will make or break you is local subsidies. So how much other funding can you find, and how little is your ask of the biggest source of funding, which is the federal tax credits. So like Pasadena has, I think, a housing trust fund or something. When they want to do something, they will come and give, they will incentivize either in the cost of land or something like that. They will allow you to make your sites more competitive. The city of Santa Monica has the same thing, which is why they're so successful in securing this funding. Other parts of Los Angeles and San Bernardino County, it's a real challenge because the local cities don't have any money. And we go in with those projects in those areas where there is blight and need, and we can't win those tax credit funds because there's no local support. I do see one quick question from Gabriel, Jill, before I know I'm gonna hand this off.
Go ahead.
Just a second. Gabriel asked, are residents in the community also involved and trained in the operations and maintenance? That's a good question. Gabriel, in our projects, what we like to do is the complex systems are always managed by the owner, the building owner, and the facilities managers. So we train that staff in intricate detail, and we take videos of all of the major systems so the on-site facilities people understand what to do to make sure that the major building systems are operated correctly. Within the units, what we usually do is a resident manual that shows what's in their unit, Energy Star appliances, show where there are local amenities, show things about, you know, green cleaning and things like that. What we try to do as much as possible is simplify it and take those complex factors out that might confuse people, including for me. Like, I'm constantly on the search for the easiest thermostat that I can put in our high efficiency HVAC systems so that my mom will be able to program it without screwing it up. So there's little things like that. We just try to make it as user friendly and take the technology out of it as much as possible.
Well, Tim, this is excellent. I have really appreciated what you've shared. And in our own home, we've been able to lower our carbon footprint by about 80%, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and it didn't cost that much money. So they say that it's the future, but we can make the future now. So we may be calling on you for some wisdom when we come to some other things we're doing, especially with net zero ADUs. But any last question before we move on? Got just a minute left. Well, thank you. You guys have been a great audience, and I keep seeing more people I know, my cousins on here, and it just makes me really happy to see you guys.
We are finishing up here. Thank you, Tim, for such a powerful presentation. So a lot of information. As Anthony said, we'll be sending out follow-up to everyone, so you don't have to retain everything tonight. You'll get it in an email. And we're going to close out with Minister James Scoggins from New Revelation Baptist Church here in Pasadena. He's going to close us with a prayer. So Minister James Scoggins.
And let me, before that, I just want to mention the campaign that I mentioned earlier during the Congregational Land Report. If you do live in Pasadena and you're on this, we really need your support. We're trying to make it so that the land where churches are can be used for affordable housing, where they have excess land. But right now the zoning doesn't allow for that. So please let us know if you want to be part of that campaign to make sure that gets passed. So put that in chat for us. Thank you. Okay, sorry for that interruption, Bert.
Sure. Minister James Scoggins, can you pray us out?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. Our Heavenly Father and our God, we first thank you for giving us the opportunity to come together on one accord to uphold your righteousness and to serve you and to serve our community. We pray, dear Heavenly Father, as we end this meeting, and that you continue to bless our efforts so that we can move forward and continue to help improve the quality of life for those who are most vulnerable and those who are most in need. We just thank you that you've given us this opportunity and this desire to do what's being done in this forum. And we just pray that you watch over us, continue to bless us, continue to strengthen us, continue to guide us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.